Hey guys, so just 1 second. All right, so let's see if we can get you guys back into this live stream. Very sorry for the lost connection there for a half moment. Hello, hi Megan. Sorry for the little disconnect. It sometimes happens that way because of, I try to rely on Wi-Fi, which is the best, but then if it ever gets like overloaded or something, or the connection becomes slow, then I have to go to mobile data. We've had to do this one other time during the semester. It's not my preference to start with the mobile data because, you can't use your phone at that point, and I just think that the bandwidth of the strong 5G Wi-Fi connection I have is usually the best. But yeah, it's unfortunate when there's a disconnection because then in that case I have to restart the stream. This is a new stream. I sent to everybody a message through Blackboard announcing that you should come back to the stream because I had to reconnect and do a new one. I see that there's a few of us that are here for now. I'd like to provide just a moment for a couple others to arrive. So hopefully we see that the numbers jump up in just a moment here. I'm sorry for the little interruption, but there's only so many things that we can avoid, obviously, with the technical difficulties when everything's online like this. I have a pretty good new MacBook Pro, and I have a very good internet package and Wi-Fi connection service here, so this is just one of those random things. Okay, well, let's see how many of us will find this meeting. Well, okay, I mean, I guess the show must go on in a sense. I can't wait for too long in order to deliver all the material that I want to deliver. So worst case, I suppose, those that are not able to find their way back to the stream will simply be able to watch the recording of the lecture later. So we'll just make do as well as we can. I see a couple more now finding their way back. Thank you guys. If you are connected to any of the other classmates in any way in some type of group chat or anything else, feel free to let your classmates know that class has resumed and we're here. Okay, guys, so like I was trying to say, did you guys hear my last few words? Where did it really cut out? Can anybody that's in the meeting now just let me know? Was I starting to provide a description of what philosophical objections are? That's kind of where, at least in my recollection, we had discontinued. And then, okay, so Drew, here's all I was saying. We are now going to examine objections to utilitarian ethics. So I was basically just summarizing the theory itself. It's the one that says do whatever to create the most overall happiness for the greatest number. It's based on the greatest happiness principle. That in turn is based somewhat on the notion that happiness is the only thing that we pursue as an end and not as a means. Happiness is thought to be interchangeable with the concept, synonymous with the concept of pleasure in the absence of pain. And we also examined how the theory could be used in a real life situation. Even though it was a trivial situation of ordering pizza, situations of much more gravity could be and would be used according to the same kind of decision-making procedure. But after that, I was just trying to transition into the discussion about how every argument, no matter how well stated and reasonable it may be, is going to face objections within philosophy. So this is one argument like that where there are definitely philosophical objections against it, and we need to know what they are. So I've created this header, Objections to Utilitarianism. And what you see there below is the name of the first objection that we're going to kind of evaluate, the theory fit for swine objection. So John Stuart Mill, in his writing, which I assigned to you guys, talked about this objection himself. So there's some good commentary in the book on it. Let's try, if we can, to open up this discussion. This is where I noticed that the disconnection happened because I couldn't receive any replies in the chat from the students that were here. So question, okay? If you can focus on this question. Knowing what you know now about utilitarianism, the theory that it is, says to maximize pleasure for all affected, Why do you think that would lead to anyone saying that it is a theory fit for so-called swine? First of all, what are swine? Anybody has an idea on that? The word swine, literally it refers to what? What things are swine? Who knows that? Pigs, yeah. So like a farm animal pig, like a hog. Now, what could possibly be the reason that someone would like hear about what utilitarianism is and then come away with the reaction that this seems more like a theory fit for swine, not for people, not for human beings? Why would anybody maybe have that take on it? Why do you think? Just if you had to guess, what is it about the theory that could possibly lead to this way of thinking about it, that it's a theory fit for swine? Any guesses? I'll definitely let you know, but if you have a guess, I'd love to see it. What could it be? Theory fit for swine. Why? Why swine? What is it about utilitarianism and the things it says that lead to that? Okay, so Jason, you say skewed towards the greedy people with more power because of the pizza example with one person. Well, no, not so much the utility monster possibility, but that's a good possible suggestion, but not exactly the one I was trying to press on here. Drew, you say maybe because someone's pleasure outweighs others. Well, it's not about the pleasure outweighing others. So I think in both of your guys' suggestions, you're talking about like, oh, it allows for greed. It makes it such that people will just be greedy like pigs, but not really. In utilitarianism, it's not about one person. It's about maximization of pleasure. So if you're really a utilitarian, you don't just get to just do whatever you prefer over and above everybody else. Whatever's best for everyone, whatever creates the most overall utility in general is what you're supposed to do, even if it's not to your preference, even if it's not in your greatest favorite outcome. But there's something that you guys are also getting to, which is along the right lines. This theory is all about maximizing what? Pleasure. And to some people anyway, that's where it gets hit with this criticism, because some would argue that pleasure, when you hear the word pleasure, you start thinking of, the animalistic, unsophisticated, bestial pleasures like pigs have. Okay, so like what do pigs generally enjoy? Laying around all day, eating, sleeping, rolling in the mud, and other things like that. And you could argue that animals can only really preoccupy themselves with the base pleasures that animals pursue. But maybe, yeah, Anthony, like maybe we're smarter than animals. Maybe we have a greater nobility and dignity than them. Isn't there some higher purpose or goal that's more worthy than the pursuit of simple pleasure? So some people hear that this theory is all about the maximization of pleasure, and they think that's telling us to live like animals. That's telling us to live like pigs. That's what pigs and animals do, just go out and seek pleasures. But we're better than that. We are higher than that. We have a greater calling and dignity than to just pursue pleasure. So some think this is a theory not fit for a man or a woman, a human being. This is a theory that's fit for swine, a theory which says pursue pleasure at the expense of all else is a deficient, incorrect theory, because it sounds like that tells us to live like pigs. Now, that's the objection, but Mill is going to try and respond to the objection. So just keep the sort of back and forth clear in your mind, right? Mill presents the theory. This objection is stated against the theory, but then Mill has a comeback, right? He has a way of responding critically to that. So here's Mill's reaction to this objection, okay? He says, well, it's a wrong objection because it misunderstands the theory. The theory of utilitarianism, he says, is not really a theory fit for swine. It is all about pleasure and the maximization of pleasure, but Mill believes that there's actually two kinds of pleasure. And when you see that there are these two kinds, that will indicate to you and will show you that this is not actually a theory fit for swine so much, but people. So let's talk then about what he says are two types of pleasures. Okay, so one of these two types are the lower pleasures. And then, of course, to the other side are the higher pleasures. Now, I want us to kind of think critically about this concept. Referred to by this word are pleasures that are capable of being experienced by animals, okay? So what do you think are some things that could be enjoyable sources of pleasure for non-human animals, living things that are not people like us. What do you believe could be some things that are pleasurable to the non-human animals? Easy enough question, right? So you've all experienced animals of the world. Okay, there's one good suggestion to start off: eating, just food. Surely, eating is a basic part of the survival of any animal, and nature, gives us a reward mechanism for seeking out sustenance and food. Sleeping, okay, that's good too. Sleep is needed in order to recover and repair the body, and so animals, as much as us, enjoy being able to rest and sleep. Doing nothing is a little bit non-specific, Anthony. I mean, doing nothing is the absence of an action, but sleeping is kind of like doing nothing, isn't it? Eating is kind of like doing nothing. But fair, yeah. I mean, they don't do anything like of greater import or whatever than merely to exist. You say hunting, Drew. Perhaps that's true. Like preying on like other animals, but not every animal does hunt, so it can't be perfectly general. There are animals that are herbivores and so on. But yeah, like I could throw in activity, which could encompass a broad range, including hunting, if in one example that's what the animal does. The activity, like running through fields, playing with their fellow cubs, if they're that type of animal. Okay, mating, sure. The survival of the species relies on reproduction, and so just as with humans, there are like physiological reward mechanisms that induce the animal to seek out a mate and to find pleasure in that. So, okay, maybe there's a little more warmth, I don't know, but then there are like Arctic animals. In general, though, it's not the most sophisticated type of stuff. Eating, sleeping, mating, basic activities, maybe touch, play. But then on this side, okay, higher pleasures. Higher pleasures are thought of as pleasures that are only available for us human beings to enjoy. Basically, you have to think here of things that are not really capable of even being understood by the lower animals, so they could never enjoy them or find them pleasurable. So what do you think are, as you're a human being, right? So things that you can enjoy, but like your pets and stuff, they couldn't enjoy. So it has to be stuff that's not like this. We're talking now about unique to the human condition type of pleasures. So what do you think could be those examples? Sports, okay, good. So sports rely on a highly specialized set of rules, which of course animals could not possibly frame within the mind or execute consistently. So there's also, you guys give the example of reading. Yes, all forms of language, whether that's the spoken or the written word. The ability for you to read about the history of the world and know about facts that predate your birth. This is some kind of pleasure that an animal can't possibly enjoy. Education, yes, with respect to any number of different academic subjects. So that covers a big ground. It could be math, it could be science, it could be biology, philosophy. So, academic study. Let's see, other things. Music, sure. The appreciation of music, the ability to play a musical instrument, knowing music theory, of course, that's all just a unique aspect of the higher intellect that a human being has. I see driving, sure. So operating complex machinery, making money and working. Well, working is not fun though. You like to work. Maybe the money's fun. But anyway, yeah, so like finance in general, just the whole world of shopping, investing, saving, and so forth. Of course, the concept of that type of financial transaction doesn't exist in the animal world. So anyways, we could add more, obviously, but you get the picture that there are some things that only human beings can enjoy because of our higher intellect and greater cognitive capacity. And then there are lower pleasures. Now, humans enjoy these lower pleasures too, but we're not limited to them like the animals are because we have this higher level of understanding and awareness. So here is what Mill will say back to his critic. So if you follow the back and forth, Mill presents the theory. critic enters the picture and says, but wait, this sounds like a theory for swine, though, because you're telling us to promote most overall pleasure. But what is pleasure? Pleasure is something that animals are preoccupied with, and aren't we better than them? Now Mill comes back and says this, but wait, it's not really that I'm telling people to live like a swine. I am saying to pursue pleasure, but the critic is misunderstanding me, because the critic seems to think that when I use the term pleasure, that I'm only referring to which one? To the lower kind. So to think that this is a theory fit for swine must be based on the idea that it's saying, oh, go out and pursue just all this stuff at the expense of everything else. If that was the case, then the theory would be more or less a theory fit for swine. But Mill says, no, the theory tells us as humans to pursue all the pleasures that humans are capable of enjoying, especially the higher ones, which Mill would argue are even greater in weight and greater in importance. So he says, don't mischaracterize this as a theory fit for swine. Just because it's about pleasure doesn't mean that it's only about focusing your mind on the lower pleasures of animals. Since there are higher pleasures that are only unique to the life of a man or woman, a human being, those are also included, and those are even greater in importance. So much more important are the higher pleasures, according to Mill, that no reasonable human being would ever choose to sacrifice their ability to enjoy the higher pleasures for an even greater quantity of the lower pleasures. So basically he's saying, like, the higher pleasures are so much more valuable and important, and that can be demonstrated by the fact that you would never relinquish your ability to enjoy them, even if you could trade them for a more fully satisfied life of like a lower animal. That leads to a famous quote from Mill that I want to put on the board here. And this quote is also written in the book on page, let me find the page. On page 79, in the left column, he says, it is better to be a human being dissatisfied than a satisfied pig. Kitty's causing trouble. Okay. It is better to be a dissatisfied human being than a satisfied pig. Better to be Socrates dissatisfied than a satisfied fool. So okay, so he's really now here doubling down and insisting on the greater value and worth of the higher pleasures that we just mentioned. They're so much more important and valuable that it would be a better situation to be a somewhat unsatisfied human being than to even be a more fully satisfied pig or lower animal. So suppose that you were given this option to trade. Someone says to you, like, God or whoever, if you want, I will allow you to stop being a human being right now, so you won't have to deal with all the difficulties of human life. But in exchange for that, you get to be a pig. But the kind of thing is, you'll be a very happy pig. You'll be the most fully satisfied pig that there is, with all the food, space, and amenities that could make a pig's life enjoyable. Now, sometimes, I'm sure if you're a pet owner or if you're just a person who's ever had some experience with animals, you might see a couple animals occasionally that look really, really happy, living their best life. My cat's a perfect example. They're just running around, having fun, eating, sleeping, getting cared for 24/7 with no worries, right? So you might look at them, and sometimes you might even feel like, wow, isn't that the life? My life is so much more complicated. I have to go out, seek knowledge, prove myself, make money, build a career, form relationships, learn about the universe and my part in it. But if I was an animal, it would be so much less complicated. Wouldn't I love to be that pet dog just sleeping in the sun? When people say that, though, what Mill is arguing is that they really are only being facetious. Nobody really seriously would trade their human condition for an even more fully satisfied condition of an animal, because think of what you'd have to give up. You can no longer talk, read, contemplate anything abstract. You would never be able to know about history, about science, philosophy, physics, astronomy. So like you'd maybe be more satisfied along the lower pleasure scale, but you wouldn't have any ability to even touch the higher pleasures. And they're so much more valuable that's why Mill thinks that he won't surrender to the objection that this is a theory for swine. It's a theory about pleasure, but there's a higher level of pleasure that is distinct for humans. And that's why he says this is, if anything, a theory that's even more fully suited for humans, because it tells us to pursue all pleasures, but especially the higher ones. Okay. Now, there's a couple of other objections, though, to the theory that I find to be a little bit more difficult for the theory to cope with, right? This first one that Mill kind of pushes back against is not the one that I think is the most critical or damaging to the theory. But there's two more that I do think are a little bit more problematic and hard for it to overcome. So I want to just quickly switch to two more fast objections on utilitarianism. Another objection is the idea that it is too demanding. Too demanding. Okay, so what is it about utilitarianism that could ever put a person under some kind of burden? When do you think the theory would impose a demand on you that you might find hard to live up to? What kind of situations does utilitarian theory involve a personal sort of sacrifice? What do you think? What's demanding about it? Well, see if you can tell me. Do you just get to always do what you want in utilitarian ethics? Let's see. So Drew, you're putting out the word compromise. Kind of. So what you mean maybe is, okay, like Anthony, let me see your suggestion. You have to adhere to others' happiness, trying to make a large number of people happy. Good. All that is pretty well correct. So suppose there's a situation where there's an outcome that you prefer, right? That's your preference, but it's outweighed by the interests of other people that are affected. So even though you want to do it, it's not what's going to create the most happiness for all. If that was the case, the utilitarian ethical theory would tell you that you have to do what? You have to sacrifice a little, give up on doing the thing that you most want to do in order to create the action that will actually produce the most overall happiness. So you would have to make these little sacrifices of your preference, in many cases anyway, to get to the result that's best in terms of overall happiness. Now, if it was just you sacrificing on like what pizza topping to order, you might say, well, that's not so bad, you know, and we've probably all had that situation in life. You're sitting at a big group, you know, there had to be one big order or something, some choice made about an appetizer or something, you know, and you're looking at something on the menu that you really like, but the group that you're with is not so into it. So you have to kind of, you know, concede sometimes. And that might not bother you too much if it's just what to order when you're in a group for food or something along those lines. But where does it end, right? So I can imagine situations where the demands would actually be so substantial as to be, you know, unreasonable. Like take this as a scenario. So suppose there was like a fire burning down different buildings, right? Like a wildfire, it's just passing through a community. And like you're out there and you have the opportunity to provide assistance to one out of two possible burning homes. So these two homes are adjacent to each other. They're both on fire. Let's say there's people in the two houses that are in danger of being burned to death in the flames, right? So they want someone to come assist. Let's suppose that all that has to be done is that a person props open the door, which they can't access from inside, but from the outside, it's easy enough to kick it open and they can walk right out. You're in a life-saving position, okay? But suppose here to your left, there's a house burning, and there's one person in it. The thing is, though, this one person that's burning in the house is a dear loved one to you, okay? Like, fill in the blank. It could be your mom, dad, sister, brother, best friend, you know, but that's one person over there to the left in that house who you dearly love, who you have a long-established relationship with, right, who you care about. You have a past and a history with them. But over here to the right, there's another house that you could also rush towards to save the people within. But it's much more people. Let's say it's like 15 people, a big family gathering over there, and they're all trapped in the house. So there's 15. The thing is, though, you don't know them at all. Like, they're decent human beings, sure, you assume, but they're nobody that you know. Now, suppose that I'm putting you in a forced choice scenario in this hypothetical. Like, you can't possibly rescue both. Perhaps time is running short, and the window of opportunity to act is very small. So if you run towards one house to kick its door open and save their people, you'll run out of time to be able to do it for the other case. So you know, let's suppose, that you can really only rush towards the safety of one side. Now, you follow my example? If this is you, and you're put in that position, probably you'd most want to save. I mean, I don't really know, but I would guess probably you'd be most motivated to save with this limited time and opportunity. Which one? Which house, you think? The way I've described the scenario, I'm trying to lead you to this kind of reaction. Which one do you think a typical person would probably prefer to save? The loved one, of course, because that's your loved one. So see them perish in the flames, that's so painful, personally painful to you. But according to the utilitarian ethical theory, just based on its theoretical features, which house, should you rush towards according to the utilitarian principles? Maybe you can follow the reasoning and tell me what. The theory, anyway, would advise, would say it's obligatory even to do what? To save who or what? The larger group of people, correct. Why? Well, just because there's more. And, where there's more lives, and there's more lives to be lost, that results, if they die, in a greater negation of overall human happiness than in the case where one person dies. Now, if the one person dies, that's a terrible thing. It affects you, it affects their loved ones. But to the other case, where there's, let's say, 15 people, that's a much more numerous group, so that multiplies the loss by 15, plus there's a whole bunch of more extended associations of friends and family that parallel to the case of your love and attachment to the one. So if it was just about maximizing total happiness or preventing the greater loss of overall life, then you'd sort of have to automatically go towards the larger group, even though it kind of violates your feelings of familiarity and bond with the one individual. So I'm just telling you the theory is quite demanding for a few reasons. Number one, you'd always have to be thinking of how can my action lead to the greatest overall happiness. So you'd never really be able to think much on an individual pursuit of happiness level. It's always based on the general happiness. The next thing is that it would, in some cases, like we can imagine here, require you to transgress bonds of loyalty and familiarity with people in order to get to the best so-called optimific act. Now, to some utilitarian-minded folks, it might sound like this is just a tough scenario, but one where it's hard to do the right thing. Do you really think doing the right thing is always easy? Of course, doing the right thing sometimes is not the same thing as doing what you want to do. So some people might argue that in this situation, as tragic as it is, the right thing is still to save the bigger group. If you had a very utilitarian-minded loved one in the other unit there, they might even advise you otherwise. They would say, no, it's okay. There's 20 people over there and, duty calls or whatever. But for the most part, I think a lot of us would have a different reaction, would think that is just too much to ask of people. If we are supposed to be kind of like morally just robotic and just attend to the greater good in every case, that's going to stand in the way of our honoring certain relationships and bonds, which that can't be correct morally. So this is, in some minds, a very significant objection. And I got one more that I think is actually the biggest tough one for the theory overall. And that is the objection that no action is absolutely forbidden in principle. All right, now this is the one that, to me, is the most deep criticism that really hits hard against utilitarian ethics. So let's try and think about this critically. Based on what you know of the theory of utilitarianism, what do you think? Is it always wrong? We'll start small. Is it always wrong to lie? In utilitarian ethics, what do you believe? Does it say that it's always wrong to lie or not? Why or why not? Let's see if you can tell me that. Based on utilitarian ethics, is it wrong to lie in 100% of cases or no? And why do you think so or why not? Simple question, is lying wrong? Okay, so Jason, you're saying no if it helps more people. That's basically correct. So when is lying the good thing to do according to utilitarianism? Well, when the lie would create more happiness overall than telling the truth would. And of course, we can imagine situations where the telling of a lie causes more happiness than telling the truth would. Imagine this. You guys know what a potluck is, where like a big group of people all bring like one dish to a social gathering. I guess nowadays with the pandemic is not the most wise thing to do, but before that anyway, we would have potlucks, right? Suppose there's a potluck and so one person brought a dish and they come up to you and they ask you, hey, you tried my dish I saw. What did you think? I worked so hard on it. You know, I really put a lot of effort into this. I worked all day yesterday just getting the recipe just exactly right. So I'm really proud of this dish, but I wonder, do you like it? How do you think it is? Now, suppose you were eating this thing earlier in the gathering and you were just, this is disgusting. It's the worst thing I've ever eaten. This is just truly gross. And I'm almost feeling a little sick even eating it, but I'm trying to be polite. Now, the person's there in your face who cooked it, and they're asking you, hey, what did you think? Now, you have a choice to make here. You could tell them the truth, which is what? Well, it was horrifying, you know? Or you could lie, and you could tell them, oh, yeah, it was great, you know? I got to get that recipe from you. That was really nice. So what's the deal? If you tell them the truth, it's going to hurt their feelings. If you lie, it's going to make them feel good. And you might think that in this little situation, sure, lying is the good thing. According to utilitarianism, it would be, because the whole point of ethics, according to the theory, is simply to do whatever creates the most happiness. So in that case, lying becomes the right action. Now, you might hear that example and think, but that's fair. I mean, it's a little white lie, so if it makes the person happy, I don't see a problem with that. But where does it end? Once we accept the principle that it's okay to lie when it causes more happiness than harm, you can imagine all kinds of scenarios that would make it seem, you know, a little bit wrong. Like suppose someone's in a relationship and they've been cheating on their partner. If the partner finds out about that, they're going to be destroyed, and it might just damage the relationship and beyond repair and make them very depressed. If they don't find out about it, let's say, then they'll never know and they'll continue being just as happy as they ever were. So does this mean that you should conceal wrongdoing? If the knowledge of the wrongdoing would make people feel unhappy and the concealment would just preserve their good feelings, you know, you might still think that that's not necessarily wrong, but a lot of people anyway would say that's against their feelings of what morality really is. How about another case, stealing? Is it always wrong to steal according to utilitarian ethics? What do you think on that question? Would it always be wrong? Or would it depend? Maybe you can think about this new question I asked. The act of stealing, we talked about lying. Is stealing necessarily wrong according to utilitarian ethics? Taking something that you don't own, is that always wrong in this theory? I think you know the answer, but just let me see what you think. Yeah, so no, but what kind of situation? It would depend. It would depend on what the consequences of the act of theft would be for overall happiness. So it would be advised by the theory if the act of theft would create more happiness than having declined to steal. And so, Cameron, you gave a good example, the sort of Robin Hood example. That's exactly what I was going to mention. Suppose that there's like some wealthy person who has so much wealth that if they had an item stolen from them with significant value, they wouldn't even really notice it because they have like 10 of those. So, you know, you're at their house party and you don't know them too well, but you see that they have like a trophy chest with like 10 valuable things. And they just wouldn't even notice if you took one. So immense is their wealth. But if you take that item, steal it, and then sell it on the black market, let's say you can generate $100,000 from it that you then donate to cancer research or something, and save a bunch of human lives with that same money that they otherwise would have just never even done anything with. Now, I guess you could argue that when that kind of Robin Hood-esque act of theft occurs, that maybe more total happiness has been generated by the redistribution of the wealth than it would have had. The diminishing marginal utility of this person's wealth has already been fully satisfied in terms of all their needs. But is that okay? I mean, after a while, you start to wonder, would there be no respect for property at all according to principles advanced under this theory? And then, okay, one more. This is the one that really bothers me the most. What about, does the theory say it's always wrong to kill an innocent person? And you would think and you'd hope, of course, that's always wrong. But even that is something that we can't absolutely rule out or take off the table, at least on the theory's own merit. Now, there's an example that's given to try and explore this problematic aspect of utilitarianism, that even life itself can sometimes be set aside for the greater good. And
they give the case of the transplant scenario. We're going to talk more about the transplant scenario in a week or two because it's used to explain this
interesting article by Judith Thompson called The Trolley Problem. But just to get a quick look at it for now, suppose there's 5 people. Here they are, just giving you a little stick figure drawing of 5 human figures. Suppose these 5 people are all dying from different organ failure and they need transplants. So this person needs a new heart, new kidney, liver, the other kidney, and lung. So they all need one different vital organ. If they don't receive it within a short time period, they're going to die of that ailment. So say they go into the doctor. Here he is. And they ask the doctor, we'd love to have some transplants to save our lives. We want to live. So he's going to try and help them out by finding a blood match. Now, there's a couple of interesting little plot twists here. Even though they all have different organs that are failing, they randomly have the same blood type, which is convenient because that means that if you could find one person with a matching blood type, then that one donor could be used to save all 5 lives since they need different organs. But the problem is that it's a very rare blood type. Let's call it XXX blood. How is it that 5 different people unknown to each other all have the same very rare blood type? It's just a coincidence, so just don't worry about that. Anyway, they have that blood type. He's the doctor. He's trying to find some donor in the records that matches. He's looking, can't find anybody. He's about to have to tell them, sorry guys, but I don't think I can help you. Just as he's about to do that, though, in off the street comes a young, healthy person, like one of you guys, okay? This person is young and healthy, and they have not got any health problems. They're just going in for a simple physical or a checkup, right? Now, the doctor has a moment free to look at this person's medical information. And if you're following the example, maybe you can judge or guess what is going to happen next. Aha, the doctor notices something about this young man that has come in, that he actually does himself have the matching XXX blood type. So he's thinking, it would be convenient if this person were willing, I could use their organs to save 5 lives. So say he asks the guy, hey, random question, very weird question, but can I just throw this out there at you? Look, in the next room over, there's about 5 guys that are all dying of different organ failures. They need transplants. They have the same rare blood type, and I could find one donor to save their lives, but nothing out there. But then you came in off the street, almost like divine intervention, and I see that you have their blood type. So what would you think, sir? I mean, I'm just going to ask point blank. Would you be willing to let me take all the organs out of your body to save those 5 people? If I do that, there's no way you'll survive, just being honest. But they'll survive, and there's 5 of them, and there's just 1 of you, So, I mean, you really should think about this because if we don't do this, then you're going to live, yeah, but 5 are going to die. So what's the better outcome? 1 lives and 5 dies, or 5 live and 1 dies? I mean, we'd have a net saving of 4 lives. Isn't that more total life saving, and isn't that more total utility? So what do you think? Now, if this guy here is anything like me and you, I'm sure you know what his answer would be, right? Sorry, no, not at all. I mean, I have my own life to live. I'm sorry for the fact that these people are sick, and I wish well for them, but I can't be used as like a pawn in this, mission to save their lives, because my life can't be set aside for the sake of other people, even if there's more of them. Now, if this doctor was like the most extreme utilitarian and just went hardcore with the theory, maybe what he should do is kill the person, take their organs by force, and give them to the other 5 people to save the 5 lives. But the point is, don't you think, and I hope you think, that that's wrong. That's wrong. I mean, that's just fundamentally wrong. That's not based on philosophy or anything. Just your intuition should strike it as clear that that would be a wrong thing to do, even if it led to the greater amount of total survival and life saving. So I'm closing with this point that in utilitarian theory, there are 3 main objections that we've covered here today. The first one is that it could be seen as a theory fit for swine because it's preoccupation with pleasure. Mill, I think, does a noble job of pushing back against that by distinguishing that there's more than just lower pleasures. So don't say that he's only talking about those. But then these other 2 objections seem to me to be a little more forceful. Number one, that it's too demanding to actually discharge the duty of always focusing on the greater good. And in some cases, it would require that you act in ways that violate bonds that you have formed. And then the big one for me is this, that no action is totally forbidden in principle. Not lying, not stealing, and not even in theory, some cases where killing happens. So if you find fault with the theory because of any of these objections, then that's fair. And on Monday, when we come back, you'll maybe like the other alternative better. So on Monday, we will develop and talk about Kant's ethics, the work of Immanuel Kant. So So I had to remove, as I told you guys, one off the list, which was JJC Smart, Extreme and Restricted Utilitarianism. So we're going to just jump into Kant on Monday. So you should read from the pages listed in the syllabus, the writing of Kant and the groundwork for the metaphysics of morals. And we'll take time on Monday to cover that. And then from there, I think we'll be good to go. So have a great weekend, everybody. Make sure to take a look at writing your paper before Wednesday, which is when it's due. And until then, I guess I'll just see you guys. I'll be in touch by email if anyone had any questions or needed anything from me. Okay, guys, have a good one. Sorry about the disconnection there. As I told you before, if that ever happens, simply come back to the stream, come back to my channel on YouTube, and wait for me to establish a new live feed, which I just do in a couple of minutes. In this case, I had to switch to mobile data because the Wi-Fi kind of got a little bit lost. But anyways, guys, it seems like we got through. And you'll see the archived lecture, part 1 and this part 2, in the channel and the list of videos, okay? So have a great one, guys. Sorry to keep you for 2 extra minutes. All right, bye-bye. Thanks.